Started. It's 11:48, and I know that Dean's presentation is an hour and 20 minutes long, so I hope But this is our first faculty forum of the year, and Dean graciously volunteered to be our first one back in the spring when I was mercilessly hunting him down to do a faculty forum, and I think he thought I would forget. But I know it will be interesting. He and I have been sparring partners. We have sort of the same sense of humor, and that should be very scary to all. But he's a great addition to our faculty, and has worked a lot with undergraduate research and made a lot of remarkable advances on campus. So I know that we're all glad that he's here and that he's agreed to speak to us today. So Dean, and at the end I'll start the questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, she is right. I have a sense of humor, so if you don't have a sense of humor, I told Kenneth I would be fired by next week. And she is right. I thought she would forget. I pushed it off so long. I thought, oh, just wait till the fall, and nobody will remember. And I got an email, and lo and behold, she said, remember when you said you would do this in the spring?
I put it on my phone.
So, okay. I started to think about what would be a good way to tell you a little bit about myself, and then how you got here, and then more importantly, maybe why you stay sometimes. I think everybody, it's a natural process of life. And so I started thinking, and I come from a family of military people. My dad was a commander down at Lackland Air Force Base. His brother was class of '66 at West Point and earned the Distinguished Service Cross. But I never met him. He died in Vietnam. So it's quite. And my brother went to West Point, a twin brother, if you didn't know that. So military jargon around the dinner table has been mostly one-sided. It's a give and I give back, and it's more of a have you thought of this type of thing. So we're going to start off with this, and I'll try to bring it back to the end. And for those of you that know history, Nelson, right before the big battle, brought all his commanders together, and they're about ready to go and fight in this great naval battle. He says, I shall fault no commander who lays his vessel alongside the ship of the enemy, meaning it's going to get bad. It's going to get real bad. And through thick and thin, the Americans call this a commander's intent. And so commander's intent, you may have probably heard it most famously from D-Day. In World War II, everything went wrong. Glider pilots landed off course. Nothing went right, but at the end of the day, they were able to get their objective done. So commander's intent. And you hear this a lot in leadership. In this case, I'm going to use a little bit different intent, so to speak, than leadership. And we'll bring it full circle to the end of why maybe you stay places. And so I have a good sense of humor. So my name is Dean Culpepper. And if you didn't get the emails last week, you can call me Dr. Culpepper. Okay. So in certain situations, Dr. Culpepper. In class. In meetings, though, you can just call me Culpepper. In meetings, you're allowed to call me Culpepper in meetings. Or around campus, you just call me Dean. There are other words used for me. Those are reserved for Kenneth and the humanities people when I send out emails that I don't grammar check or spell check. So, and if you ever catch me online on my Xbox, that's my handle name, LCU007. Some of the kids know me. But now with the new social media guidelines, I have to update that regularly. And so it's great for someone like me. I get to play every day now because I have to show regular social interaction. So to maintain that identity, I get to play every day. And every once in a while I'll come across somebody from LCU playing too. And if they're in our department, they know who you are. And it's kind of fun, back and forth. But those new guidelines require me to play every day. So I started to think about why did I get in this great profession when most days it's pulling hair, pulling teeth with students, and if you're a math person, you'll get a kick out of this. So It's the 3 laws of graduation, and I thought this would be a really, really funny one to talk about. And it's the second law, is it's directly proportional to the flexibility given by the advisor to the proportion of the student's motivation. Okay, so work through this. Age, flexibility over motivation equals, it's the description of the effect of the forces experienced by a grad student. A highly motivated student may still remain in grad school given enough flexibility. As motivation goes to 0, the duration of the PhD goes to infinity. Luckily, I had a wife who was really motivated to get me done and out of there. So I thought this one was a really great idea of how quickly I moved through, not because of anything else, but just simply my wife saying, you need to get done, you need to get done. I cannot take this anymore. So motivation, or the lack thereof. I started my undergraduate in Berry College in Georgia. If you don't know anything about Berry College, it's the largest campus in the world, 28,000 acres. It is, well, let's get to it, because it's really shaped who I am and where I become. This is the opening picture as you arrive on campus. This is the administration building. And you'll see a common theme throughout most of the pictures that I've taken. One being, you'll see some nice columns on every building, and spires at the top of academic buildings. So you go through the columns to learn, but you aspire to something greater. So this is the administration's building. You turn right, you go to the Ford complex, which we'll talk about, and left is the main campus. And back behind it is the mountain campus. So this is the administration building. This is the new library on campus that's been renovated. You can see spires, columns, green spaces to sit and talk. This is the new recreation building on campus, columns, spires, totally students. And every building's open 24 hours a day, and no building is ever closed to a student. So that's important. Science building, a little bit different type of spire, a little bit different type of columns, but it's the newest building on campus. And I think what's really great, if you ever get to visit the campus, go visit the science building, and in the middle is I hope I'm saying this right, a Foucault pendulum. It's talking about the axis and how they will to know that the axis spun on the earth. And it's a 60-foot pendulum that stretches from the top to the bottom and moves back and forth. So it's a pretty neat entranceway into the science building there. It wasn't there when I went there. We'll talk about some of those things that always seem to happen when you leave. This is the business building. Notice nice long columns, grasses. Spent most of my time sitting on the grass talking about things that don't mean much as an undergraduate student. Talking about lectures, talking about your professors and the egomaniacs they are. Liberal arts humanities building. I don't know if you can see it, but it says, whether at work or at play, do your best. It's described across the top. Nice green open spaces to sit and talk. This is the Hodge building. I was hoping Don Williams would be here. This is the theater building. It's the back side, more columns. You see nice themes, but I think it's important to understand where you come from so that you know some of the things that you get. It's all outdoors. So it's a profession that I really chose. This is the dorm room that I stayed in. I think if you asked the dean of students at the time, I had the most demerits of any freshman since like 1920 in the first semester. It's because on the back side there's a quad in the middle, and you could hit the back side with water balloons fairly accurately if you just weighted them correctly. Dorm for the females was here. There is a back way into the dorm rooms that they don't tell you about that almost every guy probably knows by the time they leave. But this is the new student housing, and let me go to the next picture. You can see that it's women on the right, males on the left, but in the middle is a common area where you go and you learn. So there's this whole idea of learning and discussing about learning that influences people. So I got this great idea that it would be great to do that for your life. Talk to students. Old administration building. Want to move on. But this idea of history, and history, this is the Roosevelt cabin on campus. Teddy Roosevelt came and stayed in 1907. It's the oldest standing, besides one other, on campus. And this is the inside. In 2010, they did a remake, and they had a Theodore Roosevelt person come and talk about history and where you're going outside. I say that because there's still Berry College has the work experience on campus. It's one of the few places where you're expected to hold a job. And if you do it right, you can graduate in 5 years, working full-time, and you don't accrue any student debt. And this was my first job. It was in the barns, and I had to feed pigs. That didn't last long. I started cleaning girls' dorms, which, by the way, may have been as dirty as the barns. But I was sad to know that a tornado a couple years ago had gone, and they had demolished part of the barn. So I was happy because no one's going to have to feed pigs, and they're renovated now to be a student activity center. So it's going to be quite nice. Like I told you, you have the main campus on the left when you come in. And on the right is the Ford complex. And Henry Ford donated a whole bunch of money, to build the Ford complex. And it was built by the students on campus until World War II came on. They never got to finish it. So what you see is half of the original plan of the Ford complex. Right in front of you is the dining hall. A view from the women's dorm up there to the dining hall at night. And give us a stay, our daily bread, as you move into the dining hall. Left side, Clara Hall for the females. Right side, Mary Hall. And this is looking back into Mary Hall. There's not too many places that have a castle on campus. Although students, all students are allowed in there. They have a separate campus for athletics. So it's really neat in that you have a typical green space where you sit and learn and talk. Some of you may have known this from We Were Titans movie. And my favorite, there's the one that's got kicking and screaming. There's a little, it's got Will Ferrell, soccer movie. They played on that in this little green space in between here for a shot. This is the Ford Auditorium. It's got a clock. I was always running late to my music appreciation class, and when the clock broke, it was really bad for me. The view from the dining hall back toward the auditorium. There are 3 chapels on campus, and each serve a distinct point. And so I thought, well, how is this going to tie in? I think if you know me, they're very religious in nature. And this is the Memorial Campus, Memorial Chapel on campus. It's where you do chapel, graduation, things like that. And what I really like is the view from above. Very nice. Inside. This is Barnwell Chapel. It's only student-led. No instructors or professors are allowed on campus. So it's all run out of the Student Activities Center. And I thought of Kenneth standing every Sunday preaching at some of the small churches around Texas. But still student-run, student-maintained. They're in charge of it. Frost Chapel. It's in the shape of a cross. Every time it snows, you grab a trash bag and roll down the hill. Frost Chapel, you can imagine, is used almost exclusively for weddings. It's booked year-round for weddings. And this is the view from the back, looking to the front. No, I did not get married there. I did not have the money. I got married in the typical Church of Christ fashion. In Sunday afterwards, and then we went to the fellowship hall, which was separate from the real building. No food's allowed in that one. Back entrance. But again, it's open 24 hours a day, and students are able to go into every building whenever they want. Very open idea to this. And then Politics aside, this is the WinShape Center. WinShape, some of you are familiar with Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A, you have a scholarship if you work so many years at Chick-fil-A. You get to come to Berry College for free, but you're a WinShaper. You have your own bus, your own place to live, your own place to eat, and they bus you down. This is on the mountain campus, excuse me. They bus you down to the mountain campus, and you have a stigma attached to you. However, they got some really great things because Chick-fil-A gives them an indoor climbing wall. They get a pool. You weren't allowed to have a pool when I was there. You could not see people in bathing suits. Sex. They have a pool. This is Truett Cathy's sculpture about children learning. Again, though, everyone's allowed open access. This is the male dorm right outside the children. And here is the leadership retreat that WinShape now runs. Chick-fil-A runs. Corporate leaders from all across the world come to the WinShape Leadership Retreat Center. And what does this look like? What did this used to be, do you think? White.
Barn.
Yeah, a barn. And what type of barn?
Dairy.
What?
Dairy.
Dairy, yeah, dairy. And so when I was there, it was a fully functioning dairy barn. And you'd bring your parents up and you'd buy the milk and the cheese and the students would run and make money. It's now the leadership retreat. I really like that because you go play with the baby calves until they started milking them, which was funny. This is called the Cradle. It's an awesome trot church that formed. It's off limits to everybody but students. So students are allowed to see where the first church in North Georgia schooled mountain children. And so a very influential part of where I came from, ministering to families. On the mountain campus, there's a nice water wheel. This is the backside. It's an overshot water wheel. The reservoir is higher, comes down, and that's how it runs. I put this picture in here because my bicycle still sits at the bottom of the little reservoir that this drains into. Long story short, there's a mountain. I was not the most athletic on a bicycle, so everyone was riding their bikes, jumping over. I never made it. My bike is at the bottom, right there. I think on drought days you may be able to see it. Yeah, another demerit the freshman year that sent me to the dean's office. Observatory at the top of the mountain. It holds a 20-inch telescope and a 16-inch telescope. House of Dreams for the president and the board of trustees to visit. The only place that they aren't allowed is in the fire watchtower, which is only open to students. But it's all maintained by students. And once a year, the board and the president have a retreat up here, and the students serve them and take care of it. That's the opening. And so we come back to what I talked about, this commander's intent. And so you have this intent, and like I said, it's going to go on to graduate school. We're going to sit out in the grass and talk. And what happens in battle, everything gets sorted out. So I made my way down to University of Houston, and we can talk about that at the end. But Galaxy Quest, I thought, best describes what happened next. And in this movie, these are TV actors, and they get pushed into what? Real life. And there's a great moment when they're torturing that poor commander, and they realize, well, this is not what I had signed up for. This is really real. And so I have to go to class, and I have to write papers, and I have to study, and my advisor says there's nothing I do is right. The first paper I ever turned in, he called me into the conference room, and maybe from here to the door, and just threw the paper against the door and said, this is the worst paper I've ever read, from a graduate student. And I'm sure Dr. B says every email she gets from me is the same exact response. So, my advisor now is the evil Darren. So you can see where this is going in terms of where we're. But at the end, what happens? They pull through together with teamwork, and they defeat. I think everyone probably has has a story about graduate school, I thought Galaxy Quest was a good slap in the face reality that some people at least can identify with. The other part of graduate school, and this is, remember, the second law of graduate school, motivation drives you. So food taste equals food quality times hunger over cost, and it's the law of free food. My wife and I, when we were dating, we would hit every student Christian organization we could find. Monday was the Baptist, Tuesday was the Catholic, and they free food during lunch. So you get to know a lot of different campus organizations by moving around on campus. And so graduate school really motivated me to move in, to get out. The problem was you have to do research. You have to write a dissertation and a thesis. And so part of what I wanted to do was work with athletes in physical education. And so you have to really attach yourself to a theory. And some of us have choices in graduate school. You get to choose what you want to write. My advisor said, you don't get to choose, you're going to do this, because that's what I do. And I think we have some. But what's really being studied now is personality and activation or arousal. And so my dissertation looked at athletes' arousal levels during competition. And we're using some of this now in the USOC's educational materials. And I describe it like this. So you have, on the left, you have relaxation and boredom. And so what happens before kids? On Saturday morning, you get up and you watch TV or cartoons or whatever. And for the longest time, you can sit there until you get bored. Some of us can watch TV all day, and you're in relaxation all day. You get bored. Well, with kids, this whole thing changes. You can draw a three-dimensional line through it, and children just wreck everything that you have. But in reality, you have boredom and relaxation. It's the same exact experience. What causes it to change are what we call reversals. And so boredom, then you start to look for things to do on Saturday. You may go out and some of us mow the lawn. We may stomp around the house. We may go do things. And it's to get you back up into this excitement. And if you're relaxation, you can have the same thing as relaxation and boredom, but then as you move through, you can feel anxiety. And so we start to look at these reversals during competition, and it's pretty interesting stuff to know that we reverse constantly. Some of us do this on purpose. You've had a long day at work, I don't want to say grading papers in English, but you might read the same stuff over and over and over again. And you have high anxiety or you're very bored. And so then you move and try to change and reverse on your own. Some people go home and they have a nightly routine, and so you have forced reversals. You have satiation, so you can just sit there long enough and you're going to automatically reverse. And so this was what my dissertation topic was on, and we looked at it in terms of EEG. And so we looked at alpha waves during competition. We were really trying to figure out when people reverse. And we worked with some foil fencers, and foil fencers are pretty unique. They slash and they reverse really quickly. Boxers don't reverse as much. They're very high excitement with relaxation. And so a lot of this work is being done continuously now with the USOC. So I got to play some part in that. The problem now becomes is that they work 2 years out with athletes, 2 years out on working with this, and so it's too late for most athletes to work with. I think it's about an 18-month guideline to use this model effectively. So we lose a lot of athletes. So dissertation was completed, and I started to apply this. Again, the wife is still pushing you to move on, and there's this let's sit on the grass and talk type mentality. And so I had started working at the charter school there on campus, and they have a real constructivist approach to teaching. So we were able to apply some of these in the classroom and in the model. So I was able to apply my physical education background. And then I think the day that everyone comes, a point in time is that the people in your life don't ever think you're going to finish. You sometimes feel like you're never going to finish, and then you finally finish. And I thought this day would never come, and I think that's what my advisor actually said in that time frame. I know my wife did, because then we moved to Wisconsin. Remember motivation. My wife got pregnant. You have to find a job. You get to finish your PhD. So wife became pregnant. I completed my PhD and moved to Wisconsin from Houston in like 4 months. Okay. Still with the idea that you're going to talk on grass when you get a real job. But there's no grass. That was the very first, I didn't even have a snow shovel. My neighbor had to come over and I was using just a regular shovel. That's 4.5 feet of snow in 2 hours that got dumped in St. Paul in our little apartment. I had a truck that spun out every time I'd go over the same hill. I counted, there were 7 hills from our apartment to where I worked. So if it snowed, you had to go 7.8 miles the other way where there weren't any hills. Okay, you know these things when you live in 4.5 feet of snow very quickly. I was hoping that President Perrin would be here to say, you moved out to Pepperdine, I moved up to Minnesota. We can compare notes on climate very quick. And you can see I was marking as the snow was coming down. I'd never really seen snow except for the ice that sometimes happened in Georgia. You'd slide down a mountain. This is snow, and there's different types of snow. And there's wet snow and dry snow, and this is the stuff that gives you heart attacks. So I bought a snowblower the very next year. I didn't know that there are different types of snowblowers that you're supposed to use. So we started looking to get out of that climate, and I go back to that quote, commander's intent. So we were looking. We had a family that was starting to grow, and I put the Simpsons because I have 1 boy and 2 girls now, and probably look a little bit more like Homer Simpson than I did 10 years ago. Not as dumb though. And so the LCU job came up, and remember commander's intent, and I was talking about people use commander's intent a lot of time to talk about leadership and planning. And this is if you get everybody on board in communication, and if you can give everyone an idea of your organization, where you want to go, then at the end of the day, everyone will be on board. And the idea of commander's intent is that's going to happen. We may get sidetracked throughout the years, but if a clear goal is stated, then we're going to get there. I think what's lost in that, though, is trust. And that, I think, brings it back. Is why do you stay here? And I didn't know Toby was going to be here, but you can't ask for a better person. There's trust. That's what's lost. And we don't do enough or a very good job of explaining that leadership is really about trust, communication. If I trust Toby and what he's going to do, then you don't have to worry. And so, why did you come to LCU? The people. Why do you stay at LCU? The people. And commander's intent really is trust. So the building took 5 years to build. You have trust. And I think if there's one thing that's brought along through everything is that there's this trust. There's this trust of who we are. There's this trust of I'm going to complete a PhD. There's this trust that your wife is going to help you at 2 a.m. There's this trust that you have to move across the country. And then there's this trust that you're going to move back across to Lubbock, of all places. Andy Laughlin says it best. I don't like it here. It's windy. It's dirty. It's nasty. And then you have trust to stay here. And it's the people, which gets lost in that Nelson's quote. Or we don't do a very good job of explaining trust. So I think Dr. B said, how'd you get here? How'd you stay? And I thought this sums it up very, very well. I didn't go over time, did I?
No.
Am I allowed to sit now?
Yes, you can sit. So as usual, I will start. Is Berry College affiliated with a particular faith?
Non-denominational.
Non-denominational. And are you from Georgia? So where were you before Berry College?
Houston. we traveled a lot, camped, Smoky Mountains. We had driven through there. I played soccer there for a little bit. But yeah, we were always camping in the summer times when we weren't at Lackland Air Force Base in the Officers Club, hiding. So yeah, we moved around a lot as kids, but not by choice. Dad finally took a job at Shell, so that when we were in middle school, he went into the reserves, so we didn't have to move as much.
So you saw Berry College on a family trip and decided to go there?
Yeah, I think that's the greatest. You know, like when you come to LCU, I know Brian said it's the people. You get on campus, and once you meet the people, you're never going to leave. Their selling point is get you on campus and let's show you around. And there's something for everybody. Mountain biking, you can ride horses, and it's always open. There's more deer than students on campus.
Wow. And so, how long were you an undergraduate?
I was able to do it in 4 years because I worked 40 hours in the work-study program to get out in 4.
Wow. Someone else?
Yeah, actually, just to follow up on that, because you said that all the students are encouraged to work. Is there a? You said work study. I mean,
that's what I call it.
Yeah, that's what I'm questioning. Is it like the official work study like what we have, or is it more of a program that the college does where they hire their students?
Yeah, the college hires the students.
So you don't have to be eligible for federal work study to do it.
No, and the year I graduated, you could opt out of the work. It was the first time where you didn't have to work on campus. So they try to match you up with what you're good at. They looked at me, obviously, and said, barn cleaner. I'd really wanted to work in the auto shop. I could change oil, but that's one of the first ones taken.
What's your undergraduate degree again?
Physical education and health. I came out dual certified in health and physical education. At that time, it was just E6.
Was there a strong sense of of community there with everybody having to work there on campus?
15 years ago. Yeah, there was, but it was more with your dorms. It was, I would say, it's kind of like that old. You affiliated more with your dorms because there was they still have it the Mountain Day Olympics celebrating the founder's birthday, so the dorms would get together and compete. And so it was more of a dorm affiliation. And so when they build new dorms, it's a big thing. The students come out and they invite old alumni back, and so it's a more of a dorm affiliation.
You in Slytherin or Gryffindor? Or
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuff,
Isn't Hufflepuff the Badger?
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened with there? You have a great wizard and then a badger. It's probably where I fell in.
So is that where you met Michelle?
I met Michelle back in Houston.
Okay.
We were in the same study area.
Someone else?
You did do a camp here too as a kid, right? You did Champion? Or
You had to bring that up, didn't you,
did.
Toby? I spent 3 days in Encounter. Encounter lasts how many days?
6, right?
Yeah, I did 3 days and had to go home.
Were you sent home or?
I was sent home. But I'm not. To be fair, Daryl Price's brother's son and I were the ones that both. So it's really Daryl's fault.
Fascinating.
I'd forgotten you guys said all the time. When I asked him why he came, the version I got was he typed in a search for LSU and LCU popped.
So, did you put out a national job search, or how did you find her?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did through the Christian Chronicle, but he's contacted me.
I didn't even know there was this thing called the Christian Chronicle. I knew there was a Chronicle of Higher Ed. So I was able to find the job through lcu.edu.
It was posted on our website.
Wow. Someone else? Okay, I'm not exactly sure I understand that dissertation. Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay. So you were studying how people move from one level to the other?
Yeah, it's the It's the alpha brain waves we have telic and paratelic from a reversal theory perspective. So I'll back up. We don't like trait theory in sport because trait theory is very difficult to improve performance with. We like this phenomenological approach, your interpretation of events. Trait theory, very good in day-to-day, very poor in high performance. That is the term chaos. When you watch basketball, it seems to always be on the edge of chaos, unless you play basketball and study basketball. The same thing can be said in just about any sport. And so there's this term chaos, and so trait theory, very stable in nature, whereas reversal theory is very unstable in its approach. So we were looking at this unstable approach to performance. So we first started off by showing people first-person roller coaster videos. And so I love roller coasters, other people don't, so there's an illicit response. And so then we started to find that there really was reversals during this procedures, and they happen before and after. So in game situations, we were picking up about 23 milliseconds ahead of time a reversal. Mm-hmm. In boxing terms, you get hit with a punch, and how do you respond? You want a boxer to respond, and a reversal back up to excitement, not anxiety. Oh no, I got hit in the face. What's going to happen now? Oh, this is how I'm going to respond. Oh. So we started to see that very quickly in foil fencers. The best ones, if you slapped them, they responded, and they viewed it as a very high motivation. What you didn't like to see are reversals back into anxiety, reversals back into boredom. Now those are just common terms.
But like in tennis, when someone has the lead and they end up playing it safe and they lose.
Yeah, they have reversed probably into a relaxation or boredom, both poor for performance.
Well, the quarterback that throws a pick six and then comes back and takes.
Unless it's Romo, that's okay.
Yeah, then
And so you chose foil because they were helmets and you could put the electrodes there?
No, that's who they gave us.
Okay.
We didn't have a choice, but that was okay. So we were able to use them.
These were Olympic athletes?
Yeah, the one that just won bronze this past was she was our 15-year-old who did not make the team that year. That, and our report had written to the USSC, said this is the one that you need to put all your time and effort in.
Oh wow,
interesting.
We were only off a little bit, but yeah, this modeling is used heavily in the education of our Olympic athletes. So it's pretty neat. Because when they get to the Olympics, it's all about distraction management, managing against distraction.
Wow.
I can show it to you. It's not very fun to talk about, but as most dissertations, I think.
So will this work on in the academy?
That would assume the academy is chaos.
It's interesting to think about.
I always tell it like this. That new overpass around Lubbock,
Uh-huh.
how many people drive real slow on that thing? I go at 83 miles an hour with no kids in the car. My little car loses friction on the back. And so you have what right there? Anxiety. As soon as it loses, that's anxiety. So it's excitement until you lose, and then you reverse immediately. So it's a reversal.
Land in the lax parking lot.
Yeah. Or when you're heading down, I guess it's 84 to Post, all of a sudden it goes from 70 down to 40. And so it's excitement until you see the cop car lights, and then it's anxiety. So those are real life examples of reversals that I think most people can identify with. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. It's right there.
What's the connection between green space and the student first approach?
It's the that's the history. So Martha Berry, Rome, Georgia is known for the Rome plow, and probably Berry College. Martha Berry, wealthy landowner in the area, and that church that you saw, that Possum Trot Church, she built that with her. She never married. The joke among the students was the reason she never married is because she could get money from Henry Ford, so to speak. So she went up to the mountains with her servants, and they found these kids with no shoes. And it was a Sunday. She says, "Why aren't you at church?" They're going to have a church, so she built a church. And the idea was that the kids would come and you would learn, but you also had to work. And if you did that, then we would leave every building open for you so that you could learn. But you had to work. And so we didn't give you anything unless you worked for it. So most of those buildings, except for the brand new ones, were built all by students. And so the students had to build it, and you had to work for it. And in return, you got an education, and that's why the buildings are
Were
open.
they part of that free slate to every new student initiative back then?
How important do you, given your experience, and seem to be pretty important in your own academic journey, that the actual physical space of that college? How important do you think it is for LCU to be thinking about investing as much as they can in the physical space here?
It's funny. I would never have thought that you could conduct research in that old maintenance barn. And so it's kind of a loaded question that you need space, in my opinion, just from my experience, to learn, to relax. And I think some of the research would say that. You come out of class, and if you're really anxious or you're really bored, you're looking for a way to reverse. And so you could make the argument that you need space as a human to reverse, in a sense. But we've spent how many years in the maintenance barn? I don't even know anything about the old field house, except Daryl Price said it had a track and his office was over here, and he'd think, so what I know from maintenance.
He came to visit the summer before we had to move out. No, was it? Yeah.
The grandstands were already ripped
it was
ripped
the
out.
spring before we had to move out in the summer. So he came to visit, interviewed in the old field house, but then when he started, we were in the maintenance barn. So for 3 years that we were stuck there, we were kept telling it, we'll get back.
And so the answer to that, I think yes and no. I think you have to, just from my personal experience. You need a space, a quiet space, that people like minds can get together. It can be anywhere. Mm-hmm. But the space maybe not be as important as the interaction that takes place. Mm-hmm. That interaction among people.
It's interesting because when advisory committees come, I think this is true of any department, and they talk just to the students. The students will always say, we need a space to gather with people from our majors.
Commons area.
And you have your honors commons room, and you guys have your student gathering space. But in reality, I think that's the only place where we have a real gathering space that was intentionally made for students. You don't have one in the Bible building, do you? And we don't have one in humanities.
Let's count the
We've got
history
that huge
office.
lot in the Bible building.
And that's what I always thought. You could build a sunken down, like this is just that's away from everything. It can be. It's built down. It's quiet. You can. This is just from walk down into it. You can do all sorts of different things that you could talk about.
You mean an outdoor space? Or?
Yeah, that you dig out and then maybe have some seating on some of those non-blowing days.
Yeah, in Lubbock, you almost have to have some kind of a shade cover or something. But even if it was like a pergola kind of thing with the wood, so it was only half shaded, there'd be people that would hang out there all the time.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
They use our chairs and right between the library and American Heritage. There's almost always students and faculty out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Culpepper.
Yeah.
Or Dean, or
I was gonna end-
007.
I thought,
We appreciate
Double
it. Thank you.
just so you know all the bad things that I've done, my roommate, who's now a doctor at the Vanderbilt Medical Clinic, his bicycle, the main road runs right in front of this. This is the male's dorm, right in front. And he probably thought I was the worst roommate ever, water balloons. He moved out the second, but we still talk all the time now. And his bicycle somehow ended up in the middle of the road. one night. A storm came and the street lights went out and a car ran over his bicycle. And he still has that bicycle, and we trade it every other year. We trade that bicycle back and forth. Because he said, that was the day I moved out, and that was the day I had a good friend. So I think trust is a great.
He had to move out before he got friends.
Yeah. It's just right on the outside.